Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to get you started welding aluminum. So if you've done any kind of TIG welding, it'll be a fairly easy transition into aluminum. There's a few key points we need to cover. Alright, so there's one thing you're really going to need, and that's some kind of aluminum coupon. Or I would suggest something fairly decent to get started on. That way you're not battling too many things. Now if you have a number 17 style torch, something similar to this, you might have a stubby setup on it or regular. Doesn't matter. And then so that you can see what we're doing, we're actually going to use our flex lock torch. It's all set up for a Pyrex style cup, and I use these especially on the videos because you can see a lot easier in the video. So let's cover a couple of the basics on welding aluminum versus steel. Here's your standard TIG welding, which is if you're welding steel, typically you'll run DCEN, where your torch is negative and your work is positive. Then you'll have DCEP, where your torch is positive and your workpiece is negative. Now the amperage will flow from negative to positive, and that's true even if you're running electropositive. Your heat's going to be confined primarily in your positive side. But to weld aluminum, you're going to weld in AC, right? So it's going to be non-stop switching. Now you can see here we're looking at our Miller 220. So when you're welding aluminum, you have a couple things that you typically won't have when you're welding steel, which will be your frequency, which is how fast is it switched from electronegative to positive. And then you'll have balance. And on this Miller 220, it tells you right here, it's a percentage of electronegative. And that's also what we'll typically call cleaning action. But what exactly are we saying here? For the cleaning action, when it's going through the sine wave, it's looking at how much electronegative as a percentage that you're getting for the cleaning. Now on some machines you'll get it flipped. Let me show you what cleaning action looks like on the aluminum. So as part of that cleaning action, the white frost is partially gas, and you got that good electrode negative getting you the penetration, and you got the electrode positive blowing off the oxides. Alright, so now you know what cleaning action looks like. So now we need to talk about material prep. Alright, so for the most part, if you just get yourself a good stainless steel brush, key is stainless steel, and then your coupons, you'll just brush them, and that'll help break up that oxide layer. Now, I'm not scrubbing both directions. I don't want to scrub it off one direction and work it back in on another. And you just take a little acetone and you wipe that off. That dark gray that you get there, that's oxide. So that oxide will act like an insulator. By the time you punch through that, you'll be through the base. Alright, now let's go through a couple drills to teach you how to get your puddle formed and some consistency before we even get into filler. Alright, so we're welding with a pedal, and I think that's very key, especially when you're TIG welding, so you can manage your heat. Alright, so we're going to use the standard rule of thumb of 1 amp per thousandths of thickness. So we have 1/8 inch material, 0.125. So we're going to set our machine up for 125 amps. And we're going to leave our cleaning at 75% and standard 120 frequency. Now this exercise, we're going to puddle and try to continue to repeat that diameter size. So maybe try to bring up about a 1/4 inch puddle and then just repeat. And I'm going to let the electrode cool off before we do the next one. And every one you do, the next one will come up even faster. Alright, so let's talk about cup size for a second. Generally, you try to size your cup on the size of weld you're looking for, and your cups are all measured in 1/16. So you'll see things on your cups like 5. So that's 5/16. So what you want to do is try to get your cup just a little bit larger than the weld that you're trying to produce. Now ideally, once you start running, you should see a nice shiny layer of weld and a little bit of that cleaning action we talked about on both sides of it. But what about the gas? So how it was taught to me, and it's what I use, whatever size cup you have, double it, and that's your gas flow. Now, if you get in a position to where you really got to reach into an area, you got to stick out your electrode more than just outside of the cup, well, you might have to change how much gas you're flowing. So let's check out the next exercise. So this is where that foot pedal is really going to come in handy. So we're going to pull up our little silver disc. Now our torch angle is not vertical, it's just back about 10 degrees. So we'll set our flow gauge to 10 CFH. I usually run just a little bit over. We're going to bring up our disc and then run for about an inch. Then we'll repeat. You'll see as you go what you need on the pedal, especially by the time I got to the third one, I had to back off the pedal a little bit. So just go through and try to be consistent, and that's where multiple plates will come in handy. So brush up a couple of these and then go through and just rotate them. All right, so these are great drills for you, and even for myself, because as a garage welder, there's times when I go for a long time without welding aluminum, and when I dive back in, I got to go through these as well. So you can see on the first one, I needed to pause for a little bit. And your goal here is to try to be consistent with that bead. All right, so let me show you what one looks like if you're trying to run too fast or way too hot. Now don't worry about the little divots because we're not adding filler. All right, so this one I was running way too fast. You can see how I ran for a while and stopped, ran for a while and stopped. And this one was just way too hot. I lit up here and sat for too long, and then moved too slow, so by the time I got to the end, it was really melted out. Now you're going to have a little bit of a dimple at the end, because you're not having filler yet. Have the little silver dot, and then try to maintain that diameter as you move across. And as you do this more, expand your 1-inch range, right? So maybe try 2 inches. And then every row is going to be a little different. You're going to have to back off the amperage a little bit because the plate's hot. By the time you get to your last one, you'll be surprised what little bit of power you're going to be using in comparison. I think it's good when you're learning, try to keep some things consistent. You need to understand what the heat's doing to it. All right, so let's talk about filler rod. There's all types of fillers, and it really depends on what you're going to be using it for, whether you're using a 40-43, 53-56. We typically will weld with Rockmount's Neptune. We are a Rockmount affiliate. And I found that this works really good for just, I'll say, everyday aluminum welding as well as cast. So some fillers, if you anodize it, it gets all black and yellow looking, and some will anodize very well. It's one reason why we use Neptune. I don't have to worry about it, but really do your homework on what you're trying to weld and what filler you need. And we'll get into that in another video. So when I'm welding, I'll use I call 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And that's how I'm keeping cadence in my head. I'll bring the pedal up on 1, and I'll move, 2, I'll dab. And I'm dabbing just on the leading edge of the puddle. Now when you're welding aluminum also, just like your work has oxides on it, so will your filler rods. So you'll want to wipe this off with a little acetone as well. Otherwise you put all those oxides into your weld. So just like before, we're going to have our torch tilted back about 10 degrees. We're going to bring up the little silver disc. And for right now, all I want you to do is just to put a little dot right on the little silver disc. Then ease off. Let the tungsten cool off. All right, so that drill is just bringing up the little silver disc and putting a dab right in the middle. That's where you'll start. And believe it or not, sometimes that can be the hardest point of knowing when to put the first dab in. So I'll show you in this plate. If you go to put your little dot in and you accidentally hit your filler, it's definitely much different on aluminum. You get this big old ball that typically you got to take the end of the electrode off. And then your plate, well, it looks much worse too. So you'll just brush this off, brush it off, wipe it back down, and you'll be ready to go again. All right, so when you add filler, you're going to bring up that little disc and you put your first dab in and you're going to hang out for a second. And you're going to move almost to the end of that disc, about 3/4 of the way down, and put the next one in. The next one and the next one. And you're trying to maintain a width and this scallop in the toes. You don't want that to be so big so that it's dot, 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 right? So let's run one. All right, so from here out, we're just going to lay in a couple like 1/2-inch beads and just get used to the small victories before you start trying to lay down long strings. So just like before, we're going to this. Right on the leading edge. What I want you to do is just go through and just make a couple short beads like that. Alright, so that was just the basics on getting started with aluminum. If you can already do a little bit of TIG welding, aluminum is not that hard of a stretch to get to. So start with just trying to bring up the pool and then see if you can make it flow in a direction. And then from there, just start with little short beads. And don't try to make these big long beads, because in the long run, it's going to hurt your confidence more than anything else, because you're going to have a few dabs in there that are bad or it's a little thick and thin. Try the little short ones, keep building, and remember on these plates, this plate's going to get hot and it's going to gray out like this on you, because it's just, there's nowhere for the heat to go. So grab some little samples. I'll leave some links in the description on good places to get coupons. Little 1/2-inch, 1-inch beads, make several of those, slowly increase it, and that way you'll build your confidence on being able to do much larger beads. Now, especially a little garage shop like this, we're just doing custom fab work. This isn't structural. You got to start somewhere. And remember, this country needs more people who can do things with their hands. This is just one in a series of videos for aluminum. We'll get more into frequency and a few other things, welding cast. But get out there, give it a try, and then I'll see you in the next video.